clams alive rather than just destroy the crop and for insurance. And then the restaurant truck, we figured out how many clams it could hold, which was only about 30,000 at a time to be on the refrigerator truck, just in buckets. But little by little, we went and we planted 200,000 clams in the river. So those have a lifespan of 33 years each.
Really?
So whereas before we were using
more than
oysters.
My cat.
Before, they were already dead and consumed. These are living, so then you have the multiplier effect, which is to get to your point about aggregated metrics. So not only are you cleaning the water and they can have their own babies and attract other ones, and it just keeps going and going and going. So that's the multiplier effect.
All right. So inside of that, you have this amazing background. Where do you see yourself fitting in what's happening? You just heard a little bit about the Museum of Consciousness and what they're doing there. You know about the Holistic Chamber of Commerce, what we're up to. What do you see as possible for our community?
That's a great question because dragonfly is a great example. Dragonflies have eyes that have all kinds of facets. They have like 110 facets, some crazy amount of facets. So they can see from lots of different angles. And what I see is where we find connectivity, just like that one line in the honeycomb for the bees. And you have your quadrant and I have mine. Finding where there is connectivity among different disciplines, different ages, different sectors, all of that, that is where radical innovation and results
So
happen.
how do we do that, and what does it take to do that?
Well, how you do that is listening to a person, just like you're talking to Alex, and seeing, what is it about that endeavor that they're working on that I either have something to contribute or that I might gain to learn about or want to be involved. So the first thing you do is explore where that potential connectivity is, and that's by listening and learning. And then you make the actual connection, which I have done with them as well, to say, is there some way that I can support and contribute to what you're doing? And that begins the whole...
People don't ordinarily think in those terms, do they?
Well, I don't know. I do know that it's hard to meet people in a domain you know nothing about. You don't have
right. You have to. It has to happen in conversation, right?
Or some way that you reach out. That's, I think, people are not necessarily sure how to talk to someone. One of the things that I spend a lot of time doing is taking technical scientific information and bringing it to a level where a child can understand.
You're about matrices and measurements, right?
Matrix measurements and multiple intelligences.
The 3 M's.
Engaging your multiple intelligences is actually the way you learn. And that's getting back to the health thing. I really focus on learning about where there is beauty and where there is harmony and where there is flow and where there's resilience.
Okay.
Because you can find those things in any scenario.
And in doing that, then you're able to what? Create? To
increase your own health. Because you're focusing on that which is around you that is positive and that is healthful. It's literally light. Really literally light. So that's where I like to, and we did that because when all the time I was doing, especially in Magic Kingdom, it's very intense to work there. It's hard, You're bad enough to be in line standing as a guest, but if you have to take care of that all the work. So we spent a lot of time helping each other feel good about that and creating that sense of community with ourselves. And the creativity was unbounded. So you had an Imagineer plunked into an intense operational environment.
You being an Imagineer.
Well, yes, and we kind of created that spirit. I have them doing color theory things on how the revenue connected with the metrics for whatever the things were, because I knew people would remember that.
How do you do that color theory that relates to metrics, and what does that look like?
Well, that was fun. We had the primary colors on the top. So the first one was leadership. The second one was operational, what you make, what you give. This is red, yellow, blue across the top. And then the third one was the outcomes, which then you go down and you connect all the dots so you can see how efficiency great leadership creates a highly efficient, wonderful presentation, and that return gets to guest satisfaction measurement, which returns to revenue. So we talk an MBA level business model using color.
So, you know, it's interesting because you heard some of the future stuff, like the magic leap or whatever, and like we know that we're in a burgeoning future, right? That's really going to be just exploding in many different ways. So taking that, what you just explained, that creates then a base by which we can make those bridges to go forward in the future. Because our tendency is people don't like change.
That's true.
Right?
And the flip side is a lot of the work I've done with my own family and experiences in the resilience category. So if your house burns down or you're in a hurricane or something and technology is gone, how do you help people who are in shelters? How do you help people that are recovering?
Right.
How do you use these same principles that nature does to recover when the rug is pulled out from under you? And even things like preparing for the Y2K event turn of the century, we had to prepare for 72 hours of potentially no way to heat food, and just to make sure that there were all kinds of ways that we could keep people positive and functioning without the benefit of any technology. And so that's just as important to me.
Right. And we've been talking on the show here, we've been talking about teen suicide and what that looks like, and how to create conversations and how to create intergenerational, multiple generational, so that it creates a scenario where people can feel safe. We had, we had the Humble Warrior on, who's recovering from alcohol and making that second hump, if you will, after you go through the initial stopping, and then what's next. So,
and there's always that possibility and hope. So when we talk about beauty and things like that, I mean, just looking at a sunset, or if you're just watching a dance and the dancers are moving, or just being, music is extremely valuable. And it's a sound-based thing. So having a good soundtrack, not only the soundtrack of what you say and how you say it, and also using music to find a place where you can feel calm, or you can feel something you want to clean the house with, or pull yourself up from.
Well, that was the part of art that Disney put forward, really. Not only the animation, but how the music went with it and what have you, right?
First thing popped into my head was Mary Poppins and the chimney sweeps, and they were dancing around, that you get caught up in that. I was actually moving into a house where there was a flood, and that Mary Poppins movie was on, and so I had my mop, and I found myself jumping around to the music when the chimney sweep thing came in. Those are things that you can do that are highly health enhancing, that don't really cost anything.
So how do you work personally with people? And let's go, unfortunately we could talk forever about this, but how do you work personally with people and organizations, and what results can they be looking for, and how do they get a hold of you?
Oh, great. Well, thank you. The first principle is fractals, which is one of nature's favorite designs, and that is the self-similar patterns repeat at different scales. So if you're within an organization, you're a one-person fractal of how you operate in the world. So you could work with, I do that. The State College of Florida have 3 levels with their staff, and one is learning the high performance. The high performance doesn't require a tightrope. It's about getting your fractal, your optimal function, your highest level, and then you bring that with you in the organization. So once people start thinking about that, and then they can think about, how can I be that positive force within my group, or the bigger in the community, and then each individual makes the collective outcome. So all of that's measurable. You can measure your own health and your own productivity, and you can also look at what the organization is trying to accomplish.
So that's what you would call nature's favorite design, right?
That's absolutely right.
So how do they get a hold of you if they're wanting to work something out with their groups and what their group are doing?
An easy way to reach me is Nan Summers, the number 1, gmail.com.
At Gmail. Oh my goodness, this has been great. I could go on, but what I do want to say is I understand your mission statement that you've given me is to help people of all ages and types of organizations create healthy, personal, and community lives where conscious design converges with what works and what matters. And I think that's a beautiful way we can close today. And I just really want to thank you so much for coming on. And we hope to have you back again because there's so much happening in our community.
Thank you, Patricia.
You're welcome. And thank you all for your listening. Thank you to Integrated Healing Arts Wellness Center for their sponsorship. And thank you all for joining us today. Stay tuned for our next exciting guest that we have.